Welcome to the module, Providing Students with Effective Feedback. According to Susan Brookhart, author of How to Give Effective Feedback to Your Students, good feedback should be part of a classroom assessment environment in which students see constructive criticism as a good thing and understand that learning cannot occur without practice. In this module, we will be discussing the qualities of effective feedback relative to student academic work. After participating in this module, you'll be able to compare and contrast types of student feedback, including the purposes of and possible effects on student motivation and achievement of each, analyze a teacher's use of verbal feedback, and develop an action plan for implementing appropriate feedback strategies in your classroom. What are types or categories of feedback? There are several typologies in the literature that reflect the purposes of specific types of feedback to students. A useful model is that of researchers Hattie and Temperley, who outline 4 levels. These include feedback about the task, such as feedback about whether answers were right or wrong, feedback about the processing of the task, such as strategies used or strategies that could be used, feedback about self-regulation, such as feedback about student self-evaluation or self-confidence, and feedback about the student as a person, such as calling a student good or smart. In the next few slides, we will provide a few examples of what research suggests about their effectiveness on student achievement and motivation to learn. Task feedback. Teachers often provide feedback about the task at hand, such as whether a student's answers are right or wrong. One example is simple acknowledgement, similar to stating a fact about a student's performance. You may, for example, inform a student, "You scored a 90% on the exam." Researchers Hinderlong and Lepper call this neutral feedback. Process feedback. Feedback is a critical part of formative assessment in which teachers communicate to students their progress toward learning goals. Students may then be able to formulate new goals for themselves and how to achieve those goals. According to Brookhart, good feedback contains information the students can use, which means that the student has been able to hear and understand it. Feedback about the processing of the task can exist in the form of praise. Dweck calls this process praise. For example, praise for being engaged, perseverant, use of specific strategies, improving on a task, etc. This type of praise specifies what students did well to be successful and how they can be successful again in the future. Feedback statements focusing on process praise may include, "I like that you tried all kinds of strategies on the math problem until you finally got it. It was a long, hard assignment, but you stuck to it and got it done. You stayed at your desk, kept up your concentration, and kept working. That's great. I like that you took on that challenging project for your science class. It will take a lot of work doing the research, designing the machine, buying the parts, and building it. You're going to learn a lot of great things." Research suggests that feedback about the process or strategies that students use are most beneficial. A teacher may also provide encouragement to enhance a student's self-confidence as a direct form of feedback, such as "You can do it." This is vague feedback that is usually focused on a future performance. Many teachers use this type of feedback in response to a student's current lack of achievement in hopes of encouraging him or her to perform at a higher level. According to Brookhart, feedback about students' self-regulation strategies or their abilities as learners can be effective if the students hear it in a way that makes them realize that they will get the results they want if they expend effort and attention. Feedback about the person. Feedback may also be directed toward the student as a person, such as praise of a student's innate intelligence. "You're so smart. You're good at this." This type of praise communicates that intelligence is fixed and that the student was born smart and that some tasks may come easily to him. According to contemporary research, this type of praise may negatively impact a student's motivation to learn and his resilience in face of challenges, depending on the content, context, and recipient's interpretation. In their book, Nurture Shock, New Thinking About Children, Bronson and Merriman call this phenomenon the inverse power of praise. Cited is a review by Hinderlong and Lepper of 150 praise studies in which a significant number suggests that praise can be ineffective and dysfunctional. Praise, for example, may stifle a child's development of autonomy, including her confidence to complete challenging tasks, if provided person praise, such as "You are so smart." The authors also submit that children may feel ill at ease being evaluated and may even misbehave as a form of defiance. Without question, praise as related to the effects on motivation to learn is a complex area of educational research. Importantly, person-focused praise does not direct the student's attention to his or her learning and is generally not helpful in enhancing student performance. For all the ways that one can provide feedback, they can vary in the strategies used. Brookhart indicates that they may vary in timing, the purpose of which is for the students to get feedback while they are still mindful of the learning target and while there is still time for them to act on it. An example of effective feedback timing is giving immediate oral responses to students' misconceptions. An example of ineffective feedback timing is to go over a test or assignment when there is no opportunity to show improvement. Amount, the purpose of which is for the students to get enough feedback so they understand what to do. Students should get feedback on teachable moment points, but not an overwhelming number. An example of effective amounts of feedback is to select 2 or 3 main points about a paper for comment. A negative example is to return a student's paper with every error in mechanics edited. Mode, the purpose of which is to communicate the feedback message in the most appropriate way. An example of effective feedback mode is to demonstrate how to do something if the student needs to see what it looks like. A negative example is to write to students who do not read well. An audience, the purpose of which is to reach the appropriate students with specific feedback and to communicate through feedback that student learning is valued. An example of good choice of audience is to communicate with an individual student, giving information specific to the individual performance. A negative example is to use the same comments for all students. The content of student feedback can also vary. It may vary by focus, which describes the qualities of the work in relation to the learning targets, including observations about the learning process and strategies the student can use to improve. Effective feedback focus is to make comments about the strengths and weaknesses of a performance. A negative focus is to make criticisms without offering any insights into how to improve. Comparison. Feedback can make comparisons that are criterion referenced, comparing student performance to a standard, norm referenced, comparing student performance to that of other students, or self-referenced, which compares a student's current performance to his or her past performance. In general, the best kind of comparison is criterion referenced, as it helps the student determine where his or her current performance is relative to a learning target. Function. The purpose of feedback function is to describe student work in such a way that encourages a student to improve. A positive example is to express what you observe in the student's work, identifying strengths and weaknesses. It is recommended to avoid telling students that work is good or bad, or to give rewards or punishments based on student performance. Balance. Feedback balance is used positive comments that describe what is well done and to make suggestions about what could be done to improve. It is recommended to be positive and even when criticizing to be constructive. Avoid finding fault or describing what is wrong without offering any suggestions for improvement. Clarity. Feedback clarity maximizes the chances that students will understand your feedback. Use simple vocabulary and sentence structure, writing or speaking on the student's developmental level. Avoid big words or complicated sentences. Specificity gives guidance and specific suggestions. It does not imply doing the work for the student. And lastly, tone communicates respect for the student and positions him or her as an active learner. Model your own curiosity and interest in learning. Avoid telling students what to do as if they do not have a choice in their own learning. As one can see, providing students with effective feedback is complex. To learn more, please see the reference list in this module. So, in general, what does research suggest about giving students feedback? First, it is important that we keep in mind the effects of feedback depend largely on the content, the context, and the characteristics such as age, gender, culture, and the interpretations of the student. Brookhart states that there is no magic bullet that will be just the right thing for all students all of the time. However, based on a review of the literature, Marzano and colleagues do offer the following suggestions. Feedback should be corrective in nature. In other words, it provides students with an explanation of what they are doing that is correct, and what they are doing that is not correct. This does not imply simply stating whether a student's answer on a test, for example, is correct or wrong. It must be an explanation as to what is accurate or inaccurate and why. Feedback should also be timely. Typically, the greater the delay in feedback, the less positive effect it has on student learning and motivation to learn. Feedback should be specific to a criterion. It must reference an individual specific skill or knowledge set. It should be individualized, and it should not compare students. Students can effectively provide some of their own feedback. Self-evaluation has been found to have a positive effect. Teachers should reinforce to students that their efforts can enhance their success at a task. The harder you try, the more successful you are. And lastly, verbal recognition such as praise can have a more powerful positive effect on student motivation than tangible rewards. Like other researchers, Dweck also emphasizes the importance of teachers reinforcing to children the control over which they have in their own learning, fostering a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed one. In other words, children are encouraged to approach challenges, explain their thinking, and set goals for themselves because the mind is malleable and one's capabilities are not determined at birth. Instead of praising students for being intelligent, give them specific feedback on their behavior, including their commitment to the task at hand, the strategies they used, and how they can continue to be successful in the future. Use specific constructive criticism that will help the student to improve and to meet learning goals. In this module, we will analyze an authentic clip of an in-class student writing conference. During the clip, you will reflect upon the feedback strategies used by the teacher to encourage her writing. Please record your reflections in your course journal. We hope you enjoy the information and learning activities provided in this module on effective student feedback. If you are interested in learning more, please see the reference list within the course module.